Most people think they know what separates Orthodox and Catholic Christianity. They're wrong. And the real answer starts with a single Latin word that almost no one outside theology can name. It's not the beards, the icons, or even the incense, though we'll get to all of that. It started with one word, Filioque, and that word helped end 1,000 years of unity. The theological and structural disagreements between these two ancient branches of Christianity are far more fascinating, far more consequential, and far more nuanced than almost anyone realizes. Together, these two churches represent over 1.6 billion people. Catholics make up roughly 50% of all Christians worldwide at 1.39 billion, and the Orthodox rank as the third largest religious community on the planet. And yet they've been formally separated for nearly 1,000 years. So what actually divides them? The first and biggest issue is the Filioque. The original Nicene Creed, settled at the councils of 325 and 381 AD, states that the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father, full stop. But in 589, at the Third Council of Toledo in Spain, the Western Church added one word, Filioque, meaning, and the Son. The Holy Spirit now proceeded from the Father and the Son. The Orthodox regard this as an unauthorized edit to a creed that was supposed to be settled by ecumenical council, not quietly revised by regional bishops in Spain. Here's the part most people don't know. When Charlemagne pushed Pope Leo III to adopt the Filioque around 809, Leo actually refused. He agreed the theology was fine, but insisted you don't simply alter the creed. Rome didn't officially adopt it into the liturgy until 1014, meaning even the papacy resisted this change for centuries. The tensions had already been brewing since the Photian Schism of 863, a precursor dispute between Rome and Constantinople that foreshadowed the larger break to come. Today, when Catholics recite the Creed in Greek, they use the original text without the Filioque. And in 2003, a joint Orthodox Catholic consultation agreed this issue need not be church dividing. Progress, though it moves slowly. The second issue cuts even deeper, and that's papal primacy and infallibility. Catholics teach that the Pope holds full, supreme, and universal power over the entire Church. He is the successor of St. Peter, and his authority is not symbolic. When he speaks ex cathedra on matters of faith and morals, he is infallible. That was formally defined at Vatican I in 1870. Both churches claim unbroken apostolic succession tracing back to the original apostles, but they draw radically different conclusions about what that succession actually means. The Orthodox reject papal supremacy entirely. For them, all bishops are equal. The ecumenical patriarch of Constantinople holds a position of honor as first among equals, but he cannot dictate to other churches. The Orthodox theologian Alexander Schmemann captured it well. Primacy, he said, is power, but it is not a higher power. It is the same power, only expressed and realized by one. The Orthodox govern through synods and councils. Catholics govern through Rome. That single structural difference shapes everything else. Third is divorce and remarriage. Catholics teach that a consummated sacramental marriage can only be dissolved by death, period. The Orthodox also hold marriage as sacred and lifelong, but they apply a principle called oikonomia, or pastoral economy. Drawing on Matthew 19:9, they permit divorce in cases of adultery and other serious violations of the marriage bond, including abuse, endangerment, or a secret abortion. A divorced Orthodox Christian may remarry, even a second or third time, though each successive marriage carries a more penitential tone. A fourth marriage is absolutely forbidden. Fourth is clerical celibacy, and this is where a very common misconception lives. People say Orthodox priests can marry. That's not quite accurate. Orthodox priests can be married, but they must marry before ordination to the diaconate. Once ordained, no marriage is possible. If a priest's wife dies, he cannot remarry. Bishops, however, must be celibate, which is why Orthodox bishops are almost always drawn from monastic ranks. In the Catholic Latin Church, celibacy became mandatory for priests at the Second Lateran Council in 1139. Eastern Catholic churches, which remain in communion with Rome, do ordain married men as priests, following the older tradition. Fifth is the Immaculate Conception. In 1854, Pope Pius IX declared it dogma that Mary was conceived without original sin. The Orthodox reject this, not out of any disrespect for Mary, quite the opposite. They venerate her profoundly as the Theotokos, the God-bearer, but they argue that exempting her from original sin at conception would separate her from the rest of humanity and undermine the logic of Christ's redemption entirely. As one Orthodox theologian put it, Orthodoxy does not admit in the all-pure Virgin any individual sin, but it does not accept that she was exempt from the human condition at birth. Sixth is purgatory. Catholics believe in purgatory, a state of post-mortem purification for souls who die in God's grace but still carry the effects of sin. This was formally defined at the Second Council of Lyon in 1274. The Orthodox were present and declined. But here's where it gets interesting. The Orthodox do believe in an intermediate state after death, where souls experience a foretaste of either eternal reward or punishment before the final judgment. The disagreement is less about whether something happens between death and judgment, and more about the specific nature and theology of that process. Some scholars note the Orthodox view is surprisingly close to the Catholic one once you strip away the Western juridical language. Seventh is how each tradition handles the sacraments and communion. Both churches celebrate 7 sacraments, but the practice differs significantly. In Orthodoxy, infants receive baptism, chrismation, and Holy Communion all at once. A baby is carried away fully initiated into the church. Catholics space these out over years, with baptism in infancy, First Communion around age 7, and confirmation later still. Baptism itself differs too. Orthodox practice triple immersion. Catholics typically pour water over the head. And the bread matters. Catholics use unleavened bread for the Eucharist, while the Orthodox use leavened bread. These aren't merely aesthetic preferences. The bread dispute was formally cited as a point of division in 1054. In both traditions, ritual and theology are genuinely inseparable. Eighth is the essence-energy distinction, and this one goes deep. Orthodox theology, following Gregory Palamas, distinguishes between God's essence, which is unknowable, and God's energies, which are how God interacts with creation. Palamas developed this framework in the 14th century, partly in response to his opponent Barlaam of Calabria, who argued that the divine light the Hesychast monks claimed to experience, the so-called uncreated light, or Tabor light, could not be a genuine experience of God himself. Palamas disagreed, and the Orthodox Church ultimately sided with him. Grace, in Orthodox theology, is uncreated. It is God's own energy reaching out to humanity. And the entire goal of the spiritual life, in this framework, is theosis, deification, the process by which a human being participates in God's energies and is genuinely transformed by them. Catholic theology tends to speak of both created and uncreated grace, and has historically been skeptical of the essence-energy distinction as a real ontological category. It may sound abstract, but it shapes how each tradition understands salvation, prayer, and the whole of spiritual life. Ninth is church structure and governance. The Catholic Church is one global institution, one pope, one hierarchy, 1.39 billion people under a single jurisdictional umbrella, including 23 Eastern Catholic churches in communion with Rome. The Orthodox world functions as a communion of 14 autocephalous, or self-governing, churches. The Russian Orthodox Church is the largest, with over 100 million members, and each church governs itself through its own synod. The ecumenical patriarch coordinates but does not command. This decentralized model means Orthodox churches can and do disagree with each other, as the 2019 crisis over Ukrainian autocephaly dramatically demonstrated. 10th is liturgical practice and tradition. Walk into an Orthodox church and you will immediately know you are not in a Catholic parish. The iconostasis, the incense, the chanting, the standing. Orthodox worship is immersive and largely unchanged for centuries. Even the sign of the cross differs. Catholics cross left to right with an open palm. Orthodox cross right to left with 3 fingers pressed together, representing the Trinity. And then there's Easter. Both churches calculate the date based on the first Sunday after the first full moon after the spring equinox. But the Orthodox use the Julian calendar, which means the dates usually diverge. In 2025, both dates fell on April 20th, prompting renewed conversation about finally establishing a shared date going forward. So, are these churches heading toward reunion? The mutual excommunications of 1054 were lifted in 1965, but a formal reunion was actually attempted before, at the Council of Florence in 1439, where representatives of both churches signed a union agreement. It collapsed almost immediately, rejected by the Orthodox laity and clergy back home, and then rendered moot when Constantinople fell to the Ottomans in 1453. That failure still casts a long shadow. The wounds go even deeper than theology. The Fourth Crusade, in 1204, when Western Crusaders sacked Constantinople itself, looting churches, desecrating altars, installing a Latin patriarch, left a bitterness in Orthodox memory that centuries of dialogue have not fully erased. Pope Francis and Patriarch Bartholomew developed a genuine friendship. Bartholomew called Francis a true friend of Orthodoxy, and there were plans for a joint celebration of the 1700th anniversary of the Council of Nicaea in 2025. Though Francis's death altered those plans, the divisions are real. They are theological, structural, and historical. But as Metropolitan Callistos once reflected, many of these problems may be more in the area of semantics and different emphases than in any basic doctrinal differences. Whether that's optimism or prophecy, only time will tell. And if you think institutional Christianity has trouble agreeing on doctrine, wait until you hear what scholars say about who actually wrote the documents it's all based on. The Gospel of Luke may not have been written by Luke at all, and the evidence suggests the Church has known this for a very long time.